Hello again, this is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today I want to talk about how to write a high-scoring TOEFL integrated essay. As you can see, this is the 2017 edition of the video. Now, the question itself hasn't really changed since last year, but I personally have learned a lot more about how to write good TOEFL essays, and I've also learned a lot more about which strategies work well for my students. And for those reasons, I thought it would be a great time to make a new version of the video. I've chosen today a practice question from the TOEFL Quick Prep Collection. This is available free of charge at ets.org, and I'll post a link to that in the comments below. When you get the package, look specifically for the question about eco-certification of wood. Now, I've chosen this question mainly because it is really accurate. That is to say, it's very similar to what you're going to get on the real test. I've noticed over the years that lots of the questions which you find in popular TOEFL textbooks are not very accurate. They aren't similar to the real test. And if you study with those, you're going to have problems. This question, on the other hand, is very similar to the real test, and therefore it's a great study resource. So with that out of the way, let's get started. First of all, I'm going to talk about understanding the question itself and then how to take effective notes. As far as the integrated writing question goes, there's a few things you need to remember. First of all, you need to remember that ETS only uses casting doubt questions these days. This could change, but it seems unlikely. If it does change, I promise I'll update the video right away. But some of you might be asking, well, what does he mean by a casting doubt question? Well, that's simple. This means that you get a reading that makes one argument, and then you get a lecture which makes an opposing argument. More specifically, first of all, you get an article. We also call this a reading. This reading begins with a paragraph that asserts its main argument. Next, there are 3 body paragraphs. Each of those body paragraphs provide a supporting point. Next, you get a lecture. The lecture begins by asserting the opposite main argument. The lecture then continues by countering, by challenging each of the 3 points made in the reading. And it does this in the same order. So, for example, you might get a reading that begins by stating its main argument that zoos are good for society. And that would be done in the very first paragraph. Next, you would get 3 body paragraphs supporting that. So first body paragraph, they would say, well, scientists can learn a lot by studying animals in zoos. Next paragraph, students will be inspired to study science by going to the zoo. Next body paragraph, zoos are a good way to protect endangered species. If that's the case, then the lecture will begin right away by asserting that zoos are not good for society. The lecturer would then continue by saying that scientists can't learn very much from zoos because they're not natural. He would then continue by saying students are more likely to be inspired by watching internet videos of animals. And then lastly, he would say that zoos are not a good way to preserve endangered species. So as you can see, the lecture and the reading are opposites of each other. They make the opposite point, and specifically, the supporting points made in the reading are challenged by the lecturer directly. So not only are they opposites, but they're sort of like mirror images of each other. They make the opposite arguments and they make them in the same order. Okay, so if you understand these things, you're off to a very good start. If you understand these things, you're off to a good start because the design of the question doesn't change. ETS uses the same question design every single week. It's always going to be like this. 3 paragraphs in the reading, and then the opposite points made in the lecture. As I said before, most practice textbooks don't represent this pattern properly. Keep that in mind as you're studying. So, once you've understood the question, it's time to get started. The first thing you're going to do on the test is take notes. First, you're going to take notes about the reading. Now we're dealing specifically with the Eco Certification of Wood question from the Quick Prep collection. I took my notes like this. First, I noted the main argument from the reading, and that is American companies will not certify their wood. That came, as I said, in the very first paragraph of the reading. Next, I took notes about the first body paragraph, and in that paragraph, the author said, American consumers see far too many advertising claims already, and these claims are very bold, so Americans don't trust them. In black here, I tried to get the main point of that paragraph, and then in blue, I tried to get one of the supporting details that goes along with it. The main point usually comes at the beginning, and the supporting details usually come a bit later. Here, I took notes about the next body paragraph, and in that paragraph, the author said, eco-certified wood is more expensive than regular wood because of inspection costs, and consumers prefer cheap wood. Again, I got the main point here, and then I got one of the supporting details that goes along with it. Finally, I took notes about the last body paragraph. Certification is only good for companies selling outside of the USA. American companies sell domestically, and their customers are all happy. So these are my notes about the reading. Next, I took notes about the lecture. First, I noted the main argument, and that is American companies will eventually certify their wood. And as you can see, this is the opposite main argument as the reading. The author of the reading is arguing that American companies will not certify their wood. The lecturer, quite simply, is arguing that American companies will certify their wood. Next, I took notes about the first point made by the lecturer. She said, consumers recognize and care about claims by official agencies and will favor products certified by independent and trustworthy organizations. You can see, as I said, this is the opposite point. The author is saying that American consumers see far too many advertising claims and they don't trust them. The lecturer is saying, no, they will trust these claims because they're from official agencies. Next, I took notes about the next point in the lecture. The lecturer said that people only care about price when there is a big difference, and since certification will only cause a 5% increase, consumers won't be affected. Again, this is the opposite of the point made in the reading. The author argues that eco-certified wood is going to be too expensive for customers. The lecturer is saying, no, it's not going to be too expensive. They're not going to care. It's only a small difference. Lastly, I took notes about the last point made in the lecture. The lecturer says that wood companies need to worry about foreign competition. and foreign companies will come to America and steal customers who care about the environment. Again, this is the opposite point. The reading is saying only companies outside of the USA need to worry about certification. The lecturer is saying, no, that's not right. Even American companies have to worry because the foreigners will come and steal all their business. So as you can see, once again, the reading makes its points, the lecture challenges those points. The author of the reading has a main argument, the author of the lecture has an opposite main argument. Once you understand this structure, then you're really off to a good start, because this structure is going to be used every time. Now, one more quick note. When I published the 2016 version of this video, a lot of the people in the comments said, oh gosh, teacher, I can't possibly take such long and detailed notes. That's impossible. I totally agree with that. These notes are meant to represent a perfect ideal. You're probably not going to take such detailed notes. However, your objective should be to take notes that are as similar to this as possible. Do your best. Make this your ideal. Strive for it. You won't get this good, but hopefully you'll get pretty close. All right. Moving on. Now that we've taken our notes, it's time to actually write our essay. And the first thing we write, obviously, is our introductory paragraph. How do we write an introduction? Well, we use something called a template. A template is a pattern. It's a structure. A template is a series of sentences that you can memorize and use every time you write the independent essay. The template I want you to memorize is this. The reading and the lecture are both about something, which is something. The author of the reading believes that. The lecturer casts doubt on the claims made in the article. He or she thinks that. Just fill in the blanks. Let's put this into use. I'll read it out to you because I think it might be useful. The reading and the lecture are both about eco-certification of wood products, which is a way to show that they are environmentally friendly. The author of the reading believes that American companies will not adopt this practice. The lecturer casts doubt on the claims made in the article. She thinks that American wood companies will eventually certify their products. As you can see, I just used the template exactly as it is written. And that's what you need to do on the test. You need to use this template exactly as I've written it. A lot of the students will say, oh, teacher, won't I get punished for memorizing a template? The answer is no. I've been using a series of different templates. I update them every year. My students use them and they get really high scores, 28, 29, even 30 points, despite the fact that they're using a template they've memorized. It doesn't matter. Go ahead and do it. It will help you. Trust me. There's a few things to remember about introductions, however. First thing, this template is somewhat long. You can shorten it if necessary. The body paragraphs are more important than the introduction, so if you need more time, write a shorter introduction. You could, for example, combine the last two sentences. Use the which is model to show off your comprehension of advanced topics, but don't use it if it sounds silly, as in, it's about a zoo, which is where animals are kept. That's not really necessary. You don't need to tell me what a zoo is. So omit that if necessary. Finally, Some of my students actually struggle just to use which is properly at all, so omit it if necessary. If you find that you're making a lot of grammar mistakes with that sentence, just take it out. It's not necessary. If you take it out, your score is not likely going to decrease. Keep that in mind. Moving along. After the introduction, we need to write body paragraphs. There's a few things to remember about body paragraphs. You're going to write one body paragraph for each point and matching counterpoint. So, the author of the article makes a point in his first body paragraph. The lecturer challenges that point. You put those together for each body paragraph. So that means obviously you're writing 3. I want you to present these points and counterpoints in the same order as in the sources. Don't mix up the order. The lecture is the most important source. If you're going to shorten something, shorten your discussion of the reading. Your comprehension score is coming from the lecture. That's most important. Some of my lower level students will just write one sentence about the reading in each body paragraph. I teach 2, they write 1, they still do okay. So if you find that you can't write a really long essay, just shorten the amount you write about the reading. I hate to sound like a broken record. I truly hate to sound like a broken record, but again, many textbooks don't include true integrated writing practice questions, so the templates I'm teaching you today are not going to work. I'm sorry. Those textbooks really should be updated, but they're not. All right, let's get started with the first body paragraph. We're going to use a template. I really want to stress that these templates work all the time. Maybe you're writing an essay about certification of wood products. Maybe you're writing an essay about zoos. The 2016 version of this video was about art by Rembrandt. But no matter what the topic is, these templates will work. They are universal. I promise. All right. So the template for our first body paragraph goes like this. First of all, the author points out that it is mentioned that this point is challenged by the lecturer. She says, furthermore, she argues, and that's it. Now, in the first blank, you're going to put that main point from the notes. In the second blank, you're going to put that supporting detail. Remember how the notes were black and blue, and then in black was the main point, and in blue was the supporting detail? That's what you're putting in these blanks. And the same with the lecture. In the first blank, you put your main point, and in the second blank, you're putting your supporting detail. Let's put this into use with our practice question for the day. First of all, the author points out that customers will likely ignore such a label. It is mentioned that many products are now given special labels, so shoppers no longer trust them. This point is challenged by the lecturer. She says customers actually do pay attention to claims when they are made by official agencies. Furthermore, she argues that Americans will be enthusiastic about products that are endorsed by a trustworthy organization. As you can see, again, I've used the template exactly as it's written in my paragraph. That's what you should do as well. One more little thing that I want to point out. This is new for the 2017 edition. I've underlined the conjunction so. I don't want to turn this into a grammar lesson. I'll make a separate video about that. But I've used so to create a compound sentence. I just want you to remember these terms because According to my research, if you use compound sentences in your essays, the sophistication of your grammar will increase and your score might increase as well. Conjunctions like so, and, but, for, nor. These are something you're going to want to include if you feel comfortable doing so. But again, I'll make a different video about grammar on the test at a later date. Now, let's go to the second body paragraph. How do we write it? Well, we use another template. This template has a similar structure, but I've changed the verbs, I've changed the transitions a little bit. Here it goes. Secondly, the author contends that the article notes, the lecturer rebuts this argument, she suggests, she elaborates on this by mentioning that. Once again, here I'm writing about the second body paragraph in the article, and then I'm writing about the challenge from the lecture. I'm putting my main point, I'm putting my supporting detail here. My main counterpoint and the supporting detail here. Let's put that into use. Secondly, the author contends that it costs a lot to have wood inspected, so certified products will be more expensive. The article notes that American consumers are strongly motivated by price and will choose products that have not been certified. The lecturer rebuts this argument. She suggests that customers do not care too much about small differences in price. She elaborates on this by mentioning that certified products will only be about 5% more expensive, which will not affect the purchasing decisions of buyers. Once again, I've just used the template as written to write my body paragraph. I really want to stress the templates are going to work no matter what you're writing about. The design of the TOEFL is very formulaic. If you can master the templates, if you can completely understand the structure of the questions, you're going to do very well. I'll also point out again the compound sentences I created. All right. Finally, the third body paragraph. How do you think we're going to write it? I don't know. Oh, I do. It's a template. Once again. Finally, the author states that. The article establishes that. The lecturer, on the other hand, posits that. She puts forth the idea that. I've shortened the template a little bit. This is a 4-sentence template. It's basically the same, but I've combined these sentences here. I think this just gives you a little bit more sophistication in your grammar, and hopefully it will increase your score a bit. Let's put that into use. Finally, the author states that certification only makes sense for companies that sell products outside of the United States. The article establishes that American firms sell most of their products domestically, and their customers are happy with their merchandise as it is. The professor, on the other hand, posits that American businesses should be afraid of foreign competitors. She puts forth the idea that foreign firms could flood into America and win customers by selling eco-certified wood to people who care about the environment. I don't think there's much else to say. I've used the template to create my last body paragraph. That's how you do it. That's the end of the essay. You've now written an introduction and 3 body paragraphs. If you do the same thing on test day, I think you're going to do pretty well. I think you're going to get a good score. There's a couple things I'll mention here for you to remember that are important. You could write 3 sentences about the lecture. If you're a very high-level student, just add 1 more sentence. It could help your score. Don't switch into the past tense. Don't use the lecturer stated. I don't think the past tense is appropriate for this kind of essay. It's probably not a big deal, but stick with the templates as I wrote them. Write about 300 words for a top score. I teach my students to write between 280 and 310. 300 is about what you need. You don't need to write more than that. You don't need to write a conclusion. It is possible to append one, something along the lines of, in conclusion, the lecturer effectively casts doubt on all of the claims and theories presented in the reading. It's not going to help your score, but a lot of my students insist that they must have a conclusion. So if you want one, you can use that. Okay, that's it. That is everything you need to know about writing a TOEFL integrated essay. If you want more of this stuff, I encourage you to check out our main site, which is TOEFLresources.com. At that site, you can read a text version of this lesson. You can also read our guides to the independent essay, to the reading and listening sections, and most importantly, our guides to all 6 of the speaking questions. You can also sign up to have your practice essays evaluated by me personally. If you sign up, I will check your grammar, I will tell you what you're doing right and wrong, and I will estimate your score so you know how you're going to do on the real test. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. That's always really special when somebody does that. And stay tuned to the channel because I will be updating more videos in the days and weeks ahead. Take care and bye-bye.